Ever come across a story so strange, so unsettling, that you just have to know more?
Uh-huh.
Today, we're diving deep into one of those.
Okay.
We're looking at the alleged haunting of a seemingly ordinary house in Lake Wales, Florida, back in the early 1990s.
Right, Lake Wales. And what's fascinating here, I think, is our entry point into this mystery. It's that Unsolved Mysteries segment on the Florida Haunted House.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
It's a piece of media many people might remember, actually. It really captured the public imagination with its whole exploration of, unexplained phenomena.
Absolutely. And our mission with this deep dive, really, is just to pull out the key details of this pretty eerie case for you.
Kind of helped understand what happened or what was reported to have happened anyway.
Exactly. Without needing to track down that old episode yourself,
Hmm.
we've sifted through it, and we think we've got some surprising bits to share and hopefully a clearer picture of this very strange situation.
So the central question we're tackling today is really this. Was this house truly haunted by a female ghost, like the family claimed?
That's the core of it, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what we're aiming to understand better through this deep dive.
And the individuals right at the center of this whole alleged haunting were the Mann family.
Okay.
First, there's Alan Mann. He was the first one to report seeing a ghostly woman.
Right.
Then his wife, Linda. She experienced a really unsettling, kind of violent episode. And she also used a Ouija board.
Ah, the Ouija board. Always crops up, doesn't it?
It does. And we also have Alan's parents, Sandra and David, who apparently witnessed some very unusual stuff themselves.
Mm-hmm.
What makes this particularly intriguing, I think, right from the start, is that this wasn't some, stereotypical creepy old mansion.
No, it was described as just a normal, everyday family home.
Exactly. And you can imagine how that might make the claims feel even more impactful for some people.
It's that ordinariness that really stands out, yeah. When these kinds of events are said to happen in just a typical environment, it can sort of challenge our everyday understanding of the world.
Definitely.
So let's start at the beginning. Alan's initial encounter back in 1991, he was, 19 years old at the time, had an afternoon off work.
Right. Around 3 p.m., apparently after getting some sleep, Alan reported suddenly seeing the image of this mysterious woman.
Just appeared.
Well, the Unsolved Mysteries account says he saw her turning away from a door, almost like she was leaving the room.
Okay.
And here's a key detail for you to note.
Yeah.
Even though Alan got up immediately, like with just a few steps, she had completely vanished around a corner.
Vanished.
And he specifically mentioned the doors were locked from the inside. Think about that for a second.
Yeah, that detail about the locked doors is certainly a significant one, isn't it? It immediately suggests something, not ordinary.
Right.
So, naturally, Alan searched the house thoroughly, found no one. When he told his mother, Sandra, about seeing this ghost, her initial reaction, understandably, was skepticism.
She just didn't buy it.
Didn't believe him at first. Now, this was the initial event, but the story took another turn when Alan got married, and his 16-year-old bride, Linda, moved in.
Yeah, now you might find that detail about Linda's age interesting. The comments section on the Unsolved Mysteries page certainly had a lot of varied reactions to that.
I bet.
But as one commenter, Leslie Worthington, pointed out, if her parents approved, it was legal then, and ultimately, it's the haunting we're focusing on here.
Yeah. Fair point. So what followed was Sandra, the initial skeptic, having her own experience while she was watching television with Linda, actually.
Okay, so Sandra sees something now, too.
Exactly. She was sitting on the couch, had her small dog, Prince, beside her. She recounted looking down and seeing what she described as a white smoky thing at the end of the couch.
Smoky, like actual smoke.
Well, her immediate thought was maybe it was smoke from a fire, but then the dog reacted, got to its feet.
Ah, the dog saw it too, or reacted to it.
And this smoky figure just disappeared. Poof.
Wow.
It was at this point that Sandra's initial skepticism really started to waver. And she famously said to her dog, Prince, we've got company.
Chilling.
A key takeaway for you here is that independent observation, seemingly, by both Sandra and her dog.
Yeah, the fact that the dog also seemed to react definitely adds a layer that many people find compelling in these types of accounts.
Animals are often anecdotally reported as being more sensitive, right?
Right. So, following Sandra's sighting, Linda, even though she hadn't personally seen anything yet, became convinced the house was haunted.
Okay, so she's on board now.
And Linda, determined to figure out what was happening, decided to use a Ouija board with a friend.
Here we go.
She stated that the board talked real good with her, And that she'd kind of believed in that sort of thing for a while, but this was her first, direct experience with it.
And what's particularly interesting here is the name that Linda claimed came through the Ouija board.
Which was?
Kramer.
Kramer. Like Seinfeld? No, probably not.
Probably not. Just Kramer. According to both Linda and Alan, this felt like significant evidence. They believed they had identified the ghost, that her name was Kramer.
Okay.
However, Alan's father, David, remained very much unconvinced at this point. He admitted he thought he was, quote, living with a bunch of flakes.
Oh. Harsh.
Yeah. He didn't want to believe in paranormal stuff, certainly didn't want to have to worry about it or, acknowledge it might be happening.
So real division in the family's beliefs there.
Absolutely. But that was all about to shift, pretty dramatically, actually, with a truly disturbing incident involving Linda.
Yes. This is where the story takes a much darker and really unsettling turn, doesn't it?
It does.
According to Alan's account, Linda suddenly just snapped while they were in their bedroom.
Snapped how?
He described her getting this very strange look on her face and then physically attacking him. With a laugh he'd never heard before, something he described as almost evil sounding, completely unlike her usual giggle.
Whoa. Attacked?
Yeah. Alan recounted how forcefully Linda held him down. He tried to get away, but he said it only seemed to make her more violent.
Gosh.
He ended up having to push her against the wall 3 times before she finally released him.
Okay.
Then, incredibly, she simply put her head back on his shoulder and continued their conversation exactly where it had left off, right before this bizarre, violent outburst.
Just picked up where they left off.
Yeah. You can imagine Alan's fear and confusion in that moment.
Absolutely terrifying. And what about Linda? Did she remember any of it?
And this is even stranger. She had absolutely no recollection, none, of any of this happening.
Wow.
She insisted, and these are her words from the Unsolved Mystery segment, "That's not me. I don't have an evil laugh. I don't do the things that he says I do. I just don't remember."
That disconnect is deeply unsettling.
Totally. And this incident appears to have been a major turning point. So significant that it even convinced the initially highly skeptical David that something was seriously wrong in that house.
So that's what it took to convince him.
Apparently. For you, the listener, just consider how such a disconnect between action and memory could, deeply unsettle anyone involved.
Absolutely. David said that it was at this point that he became genuinely concerned, decided they needed to seek help, hoping someone, somewhere, could explain what was going on.
Understandable.
So the family then tried various methods to resolve the issue. A spiritualist advisor suggested pouring salt all around the house.
The salt thing again.
Which they did. They even kept bags of salt under their beds. They also attempted what they called a homegrown exorcism.
A homegrown exorcism? What does that even entail?
The segment doesn't go into detail, but you can imagine it wasn't professionally sanctioned.
Right. And did any of this work?
Well, according to Sandra's recollections, these attempts were pretty ineffective. In fact, she claimed that every time they tried something to, alleviate the situation, the activity would temporarily subside.
Okay, some relief.
But then it would return even stronger, with more happenings, as she put it.
Oh, great. So it backfired.
Seems like it. This pattern of escalation after attempts to intervene is actually a recurring theme in many reported haunting narratives, as you might know.
Yeah, I've heard that before. So things got worse.
Following these unsuccessful attempts, the phenomena reportedly worsened quite a bit. The house started to develop a bad odor.
Oof. What kind of odor?
Not specified, just bad. And everyone in the family began to experience severe headaches.
Headaches. That's interesting. Physical symptoms.
Yeah. And some rooms in the house even developed a noticeable deathly chill.
Okay. Classic haunting signs there. Bad smells, cold spots, physical effects.
And then Sandra described the onset of auditory phenomena, hearing voices.
Voices. Like talking to them.
She recounted hearing what sounded like a whole mass of voices, dull, muttering, with one distinct woman's voice seemingly on top of the others.
But could they understand anything?
No, she said they couldn't make out anything that was being said, which, that element of unintelligible voices really adds to the unsettling and potentially frightening nature of these claims, wouldn't you agree?
Oh, definitely. Just noise and murmuring. Creepy.
It certainly is. And while David and Sandra had tried to remain somewhat dismissive of the earlier events, David recounted an incident that further shook his skepticism.
Another one for David.
Yeah. He described stopping in the middle of the hallway, noticing that strange smell again.
The bad odor.
Right. And then having the sudden thought, almost like a little voice inside his head, clearly identifying the presence as, Isabella.
Isabella. Where did that come from? Not Kramer?
Nope, Isabella. For David, who started as a non-believer, this personal, almost internal confirmation seemed to really solidify his conviction.
Wow. So first Kramer from the Ouija board, now Isabella from an internal voice in David's head. That's confusing.
It is a bit inconsistent, yeah. But it was a significant moment for David, clearly. This internal voice naming the entity seems to have been a key factor in changing his mind completely.
Understandably, by this point, the Manns were quite distressed, especially Linda, after her frightening possession experience.
I can only imagine.
She and Alan made the decision that it was time for them to move out of the house.
Can't blame them. But before they actually moved, word of their situation reached the Center for Paranormal Studies, located in Silver Springs, Florida.
Ah, the investigators arrive.
3 of the center's founders, equipped with various pieces of, electronic equipment, visited the man's home to conduct an investigation. Andrew Nichols was one of the parapsychologists on this team.
Okay, Andrew Nichols. What were his impressions?
Well, Nichols' initial impressions of the house were quite telling. He described it as having an oppressive ambience, almost a depressive type of feeling.
So a heavy atmosphere.
Yeah. And he also noted that after spending several hours inside the house, the entire investigative team began to experience headaches.
The whole team got headaches, just like the family reported.
Exactly, which seemed to corroborate the family's claims of this physical symptom. So, you see, it wasn't just the family reporting these things at this point.
That is interesting. What else did they find?
Andrew Nichols also reported that Linda and Alan's former bedroom registered the highest levels of what they considered paranormal activity.
Their old room, where the attack happened.
Presumably. This led him to believe that it would be a good place to begin taking photographs, in an attempt to document any phenomena.
Makes sense. Did they get anything?
He took 2 Polaroid photographs. One during a period when the reported activity was heightened, and another one shortly after that period.
Okay.
The second photograph appeared to be completely normal, nothing unusual.
But the first one, during the heightened activity.
But it was the first photograph that was particularly intriguing. Nichols reported that in the foreground of the image, they could see a vague humanoid shape.
A humanoid shape, like a figure.
Vague. Now, it's important to note his cautious interpretation of this. He was very careful.
Okay, what did he suggest?
He suggested several possibilities. 1, it might be a reflection caused by some unusual environmental factor present at the time.
Plausible. Reflections can be tricky.
2, it could be a psychological artifact created by their expectations or the situation itself.
Like seeing faces in clouds. Pareidolia.
Sort of, or even, and he stressed this was speculative, a potential contact with another dimension of existence.
Whoa, okay, so reflection, psychological trick, or another dimension. That covers a lot of ground.
It does. His careful and nuanced explanation is really important to consider here. He wasn't jumping to conclusions.
He doesn't definitively state it's a ghost.
No. But at the same time, he doesn't entirely dismiss the possibility of something unexplained being captured either.
So what happened after the investigators left? Did things calm down?
Well, approximately 2 months after the paranormal investigators' visit, a local minister came to visit the Mann family.
Okay, and minister gets involved.
And following this visit, the reported haunting activity apparently ceased altogether.
It just stopped after the minister's visit.
Seemingly so, according to the report. However, despite this apparent end to the disturbances, David and Sandra made the decision to move out of the house shortly thereafter anyway.
Even though the activity stopped.
Yeah. You can imagine that after such prolonged experiences, maybe a sense of unease might just linger, Maybe they just wanted a fresh start.
That really speaks volumes about the profound impact these events had on them, doesn't it? If they moved out even after it stopped.
It certainly suggests it.
The central persistent mystery, of course, remains. Was the house in Lake Wales truly haunted by the spirit of someone named Isabella Kramer? Or just Isabella? Or Kramer?
Right, the name confusion adds another layer. But the original Unsolved Mysteries segment itself points out a rather significant detail regarding either name, really.
Nick is.
There are no official records of anyone named Isabella Kramer, or even just Kramer or Isabella in a relevant context, ever having lived in that particular area.
No records at all?
None found. Think about that for a moment in relation to the family's strong conviction about her identity, whether it was Kramer or Isabella.
Yeah, that's a big hole in the story.
Exactly. Despite this lack of any supporting documentation or official records for an Isabella Kramer in the Lake Wales vicinity, The Mann family remained absolutely convinced that she, whoever she was, whatever name they settled on, was the entity they had encountered.
The one responsible for their terrifying experiences.
Yes. This discrepancy between their firm belief and the complete absence of any historical trace is a really key part of this enduring puzzle for anyone looking into this case.
And while the Unsolved Mysteries segment primarily presents the Mann family's account and, the findings of the paranormal investigators,
Right, it focuses on their story.
it's important for you, as someone engaging with this deep dive, to also consider that there could be alternative explanations for these events, even if they weren't the main focus of that particular TV show.
Definitely.
I mean, the investigators' own cautious language when describing that photograph, using phrases like maybe a reflection or maybe a strange artifact.
It subtly hints at the possibility of non-paranormal causes, doesn't it?
Yeah, it leaves the door open for other interpretations of what the family experienced.
That's a crucial point. Now, adding another layer to this story are the comments. The comments left by viewers on the Unsolved Mysteries page for this case.
Ah, yes, the internet commentary. Always interesting.
These reactions really provide a wide range of perspectives from people who watched the original segment. And they offer a glimpse into how this story resonated and, continues to resonate with different individuals.
What's really fascinating about these comments, as you said, is just the sheer variety, the different takes and personal experiences people shared.
Like what? Any examples stand out?
Yeah. For instance, one commenter, Lily Abbey, recounts their own experience seeing what they believed was a ghost down in Panama City, Florida, sort of suggesting that for some, paranormal activity in Florida is just a thing they accept based on their own encounters.
Right. Personal anecdotes lending credence to the possibility. We also see a strong thread of belief in, demonic activity from several commenters.
Demonic, like related to the Ouija board.
Exactly. People like Christopher, Pastor John, an anonymous poster, they often draw a direct connection between using Ouija boards and potentially opening doors to negative or, malevolent spirits.
That's a common belief.
Pastor John even mentions living just a few streets away from the house and believes the entire area has old spirits, which highlights how local beliefs and folklore can kind of become intertwined with specific alleged hauntings.
Interesting. But surely not everyone believed it was demons or ghosts.
Oh, absolutely not. We also see a significant amount of skepticism expressed in the comments. Nathaniel Fincher raises a pretty plausible alternative explanation: carbon monoxide poisoning.
Ah, CO poisoning. That could explain the headaches, maybe even hallucinations.
Potentially, yes. He suggests it could account for some of the reported symptoms. And another commenter, E, expands on this idea, suggesting a combo of things. Animals may be getting into the furnace system, the presence of mold in the house.
Mold can cause weird health issues, too.
Right. And the possibility of carbon monoxide. So these theories offer more natural explanations for some of the unsettling aspects of the man's experience.
It's good to see those perspectives represented, too. What about local knowledge? Did anyone know the house?
It's also interesting to note the local connections that pop up. Marcus Marsilius Parks mentions his mother lived nearby and that a high school teacher he knew felt the house was definitely haunted.
So some local lore existed.
Seems like it. Jeannie Gear, who says she's lived in Lake Wales her entire life, sort of corroborates the idea of paranormal activity in the area generally. She even mentions having seen a woman in yellow nearby, perhaps suggesting other local ghost stories circulating.
A different ghost. Woman in yellow. Okay.
And Mariah, who lived in Lake Wales as a child, recounts just a general weird feeling around the house and mentions a lingering smell of rotten eggs reported by a family who moved in later, plus a persistent stain on the floor.
Rotten egg smell. That's often associated with sulfur, sometimes linked to negative entities in folklore.
Interesting. These local anecdotes, while they don't directly confirm the man's specific experience, do contribute to a sense of the area having a history of, let's say, unusual occurrences for some residents.
Right. And the Ouija board you mentioned, it was divisive.
Oh, yeah. The Ouija board, as we touched on, remains a really divisive point in the comments, as you might expect.
So some people warning against it.
Definitely. One anonymous poster strongly warns against its use, echoing that belief that it can attract negative entities. But then, in contrast, someone called Meow Mix offers a much more skeptical view.
What do they say?
Just referred to it as a Hasbro board game. No inherent supernatural power. Which really reflects the ongoing debate around that tool, both in paranormal investigation circles and just in popular culture generally.
True. It always sparks debate. Anything else surprising in the comments?
Well, there's the rather unexpected and quite detailed discussion about the age difference between Alan and Linda when they got married.
Yeah, the 19 and 16 thing. People commented on that.
Quite a bit. Leslie Worthington made the point that if parents approved, it was legal, and it's not really the main issue of the haunting story.
Fair enough.
However, someone named Humbert offered a contrasting opinion, stating kids shouldn't marry that young. But then, interestingly, Connor Mann, who identifies himself as Alan's son,
Whoa, the son commented.
apparently. He clarifies that Linda did have parental permission and adds that while his parents later divorced and then remarried each other, they both vividly remembered the events of the haunting.
Wow, that's quite the addition.
And Jenny Ireland, who mentions she used to babysit Connor, defends Alan's character against some negative comments that were being made in that thread. It's just a reminder of how personal these stories can become and how online discussions can sometimes veer into really unexpected territory.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Did anyone want to go check out the house?
It certainly is. And yes, we also see several people in the comments, including Henry, Randy, Mike, and David, directly asking for the address, expressing a desire to investigate it themselves.
Amateur ghost hunters.
Seems like it. Another commenter, Melissa Joyce, actually provides it. 1424 Lakeview Road, Lake Wales, FL.
Someone just posted the address.
Okay. And finally, Hollycam clarifies that Sam and Colby, who were mentioned in another comment, are popular paranormal investigators on YouTube, which just shows how older cases like this continue to inspire new generations of paranormal enthusiasts and investigations.
Right. The story lives on online.
But ultimately, after all that, we keep coming back to that central unanswered question, right at the heart of the Mann family's experience. Who or what was Isabella Kramer?
Or Isabella.
Or Kramer.
Right. Why is there absolutely no record of her existence in that area, despite the strong, unwavering conviction of the Mann family that she was indeed the source of their terrifying, prolonged experiences?
That complete absence of any supporting records for Isabella Kramer or any variation in the local history is, as you said, a really significant detail, isn't it?
It's huge. It's a point that any investigation, whether you approach it from a, paranormal perspective or a more skeptical one looking for conventional explanations, would really need to grapple with. It creates a real, undeniable void in the narrative as the Manns presented it.
Absolutely. So as we bring this deep dive to a close, let's just quickly recap the key points we've explored about this alleged haunting in Lake Wales.
Okay, let's wrap it up.
We had the Mann family, including an initial skeptic in David, all reporting increasingly disturbing phenomena, ranging from visual apparitions,
like the woman Alan saw, the smoky thing Sandra saw.
Right. And Linda's violent outbursts, those strange and unpleasant smells, the headaches, the disembodied voices.
The whole range of classic haunting phenomena, reportedly.
Them paranormal investigators visited. They documented what they considered high levels of unusual activity and even captured that mysterious image on film, however ambiguous it was.
The vague humanoid shape.
Exactly. Despite a local minister's visit seemingly bringing an end to the haunting events, the family ultimately decided to move out anyway.
Suggesting the impact was deep, regardless.
And at the very center of this whole account is that enduring unanswered question of Isabella Kramer, a name, or names, that appear to have no verifiable connection to the area.
Which leads us to a final thought for you as you've taken this deep dive with us. What do you ultimately make of the strange events that allegedly occurred in that ordinary-looking house in Lake Wales?
Yeah, what's your take?
Was it a genuine haunting by a lost soul named Isabella Kramer? Or perhaps something darker, maybe stirred up by the use of the Ouija board, as some commenters suggested?
Or could there be a more down-to-earth explanation that just remains undiscovered, maybe involving those environmental factors like carbon monoxide or mold, or even complex psychological dynamics at play within the family?
And maybe beyond this specific case, what does this story and the really wide spectrum of reactions to it that we've seen in those comments, what does it tell us about our own human tendency to search for answers? And the different lenses through which we try to understand events that seem to defy easy or, conventional categorization.
It's definitely something to think about. What explanations satisfy us and why?
Exactly. Something to really mull over.